Awesome. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the APA Los Angeles chapter with my guest today, that is Gavin Bond. Thank you all for attending, and I wanted to just start by thanking Sammy's, who have been an amazing sponsor for the APA in Hull. And also to let you know, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A section and not in the chat, because I probably will miss them. So yeah, let's get going. I will give you a bit of an intro to Gavin. So Gavin first found his path into photography while studying fashion design at Central St. Martin's School of Art. He made the switch from fashion design over to the graphic design department, where for the next few years, he focused on photography. Gavin's Backstage images led to commissions from publications such as the Sunday Times magazine and The Independent, which in turn broadened the relationships with other designers such as Alexander McQueen and John Galliano, who were both fellow students at St. Martin's. With his growing relationships in fashion, Gavin's images led to commissions from publications such as the Sunday Times, Elle, Marie Claire, and British GQ that's still going strong today, having shot over 45 covers for that title. OMG. Gavin?
Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
Hi. Sorry, that was quite a lot to say, but I've been doing
it's okay.
it for a minute. Apologies. So,
it's okay, no worries.
Yeah, it started in the early 90s.
Yeah, the infamous 90s with all the is it what they call them now? The
supermodels. No.
Yeah, no. But they had a name, not just supermodels. They were like, you know, the 5 supermodels of the 90s were like, you know, yeah, a big thing.
I could list their names, but I don't know what that's. But yeah. So I think we planned that I was going to share a bunch of images and really kind of talk. There's this little bit of a kind of a story from the. Do you want to kind of go through that, or?
Yeah. Well, like how is it? Can you tell us how it is that you were doing fashion design and then switching into photography, and being part of the whole kind of Central St. Martin's alumni?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it was the late. God, yeah. I graduated in '92. And I was there for 4 years. So yeah, it was the late 80s. So yeah, I went to St. Martin's thinking that I was going to be a fashion designer. You know, I had an interest in clothes, thought I was going to do fashion design, but was really not very good at pattern cutting whatsoever. And you know, the highlight of a fashion student's calendar is we used to get to go to the fashion shows, you know, in London, and then you do your best to go out to Paris. You travel out there and you beg, borrow and steal to get that ticket to go to a fashion show. And I always had a passion for photography. And the chap that used to put on the shows for the graduating St. Martin students, he also would put on the show for Vivienne Westwood. And he gave me an opportunity one year to go backstage at one of Vivienne's shows and take some pictures. And I was backstage with my camera. And my first camera was a Veronica ETRSI. I remember it well. It was a 6 by 4.5 format camera that would shoot 12 frames. And I'd be backstage with my little Veronica kind of hanging out, and there'd just be this world of supermodels in front of me. And I'd start taking these pictures. And then I think after that show, he was kind enough to share those images with Vivienne. And she loved the pictures, and from that moment I was like, wow, there's the whole world of sort of photography out there, and I want to do this. And at the time there was a graphic design course, and they didn't have a set photography course as such, but there was a couple of people on there that were doing photography on this graphic design course. Actually, one of them, who I believe you guys are chatting to tomorrow, or the New Yorker, and that was Platon. And Platt was like a few years ahead of me in college. And I was like, oh, hold on, there's a guy here that's doing photography, but he's on a graphic design course. So this is cool. So at that time I built up, some kind of portfolio photography that I'd done within the fashion course. And St. Martin's is a place that just has that amazing sort of individual, they let people flourish sort of individually. And I went over to the graphic design course, met with the tutors over there, and literally in the middle of my fashion design degree, I switched, went over to the graphic design degree, and that was it. And just and started focusing on photography. And but what was fantastic is I'd been studying with all these fashion students, the likes of Hussein Chalayan and Alexander McQueen was a couple of years above me, but Stella McCartney, Antonio Berardi, and then friends who were then went on to be like amazing stylists, people like Katie Grand and people, who were at the Independent and the Sunday Times. So we all suddenly got to collaborate together. So, although now I'm doing on this graphic design degree course doing photography, suddenly you're photographing friends' clothes that are on the fashion design degree. So you're all collaborating together. So most of my degree show was photographs of friends' clothes that were studying fashion design. So it was a really great collaboration. And that's how it all kind of started.
Yeah, it must have been such a surreal and like amazing time, but because you're in it, you don't really realize how surreal it is. It's like photographers like myself, it's just like, oh my God, I would love to have been that. But then obviously when you're in it, you don't really realize how amazing.
No, you're right. I think looking back now, it was really special, and to be thrown into the middle of Soho, you're studying this really, this amazing college, in Charing Cross Road, and has so much great history and all these amazing people that come out of there. But I think, the great thing is it wasn't like everyone was, okay, this is your thing and you've got to learn this today and you've got to do this particular course. It's, if you didn't apply yourself, right, that was it. That's your problem. But if you did apply yourself, you very much created your own path. And I think that's why there's, especially, in the world of, say, fashion design, there's been so much great individual talent that's come out of there. And because it's not that cookie cutter approach, which is really fun. But yeah, it was an amazing time, and I still remember it very, very fondly.
Oh, I love it. And so so like as part of is it like the end of year show where you're photographing all the fashion students designs and everything? Is that how you got into going like deep backstage, or was that something that you was just interested in?
I think it was it's sort of the first kind of, when I went backstage for the very first time, it would have been if I'd stayed on the fashion course, it would have been my year off, because I was on a 4-year course. So you have what's called a year off, where you go out into the industry. In that year off, I didn't take the year off. I went over to the graphic design degree course and I did 2 years there.
Right.
So that was sort of the first time. And then I think 6 months later, then Vivienne sort of gave me the opportunity to go back again. But this time, I then spent a lot of time in her atelier, sort of documenting her making a collection and all of that stuff. And it was I think right before I graduated that I took those photographs. And so a lot of my graduation show, I'd already been taking those images, and I kind of had that access. And I was fortunate enough to, I was signed, by an agent, from my graduation show. So, and at that point, I went out into the world, and there were so many amazing platforms back then. I'm sure you can, remember. Maybe not. You're a lot younger than me, but
you can try me.
All those supplements like the Independent, the Sunday Times, the Observer, they were such incredible platforms for young photographers, to shoot for. And every week I found myself shooting for those. And you had magazines then as well, which, like ID and The Face and Arena, and which are now these major fashion Bibles that people give their right arm to shoot for. But back then they were really just this, and Dazed, and they were really just a platform for young photographers to shoot for. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of all of that, and, to shoot for those. And it just gave, as a young photographer, it was an amazing platform, to have all that there for you. And, I found myself working with, you know, fellow people that I'd studied fashion with who are now styling those stories or working with me. So it just felt like a big kind of, a little gang of us all working together. But
amazing. Do you want to take us through like
sure. Let me do this little
some of your
screen share thing. Share. Let's see. Let's go. Okay, here we go. All right. So I've just put together a range of images that I feel that, you know, tell stories and again give kind of quite a large scope to what I do, because there's definitely I definitely don't do one thing. There's a lot of different things going on. So if we go all the way back here to the early 90s, these are some of these images backstage. So this is Linda and Christy at a Vivienne Westwood show. I think this was actually the show where I believe when Naomi fell over on the catwalk in those memorable high heels. But these were, I always shot on the Veronica ETRSI, a roll of Tri-X that I rated at +2, and I shot at a 30th of a second. That was pretty much it. That was kind of how I remember shooting.
And no additional lighting, it's all just...
No, this is all just available light. These were some of these moments back then. But what's the most special thing about this set of images is at the beginning of this pandemic, I went away for 6 months, no joke, into the woods, lived in a log cabin and got out all these negatives, and there's thousands of them. And a lot of the images have never, ever been seen.
Wow.
And I scanned all these negatives, and there's a lot of color as well. And what's really exciting is later this year, probably in the fall, I'm having a book come out and a major exhibition in a very prolific gallery in London. And it's all this work. So it's really exciting for me because this is how I begun. You know, I haven't, everyone sort of expects to see that Gavin Bond book full of celebrities, but I haven't done that yet. So, and the very first book that I would have done and is going to be published is the work of how I very first started taking pictures. So
that's really humbling. It's like, it's also it's like a mini time capsule for you as well, but then you're also reminiscing, and it sounds like the pandemic almost just gave you this book opportunity, because if you hadn't been in that wood cabin, would you have gone through all the negatives?
No.
Wow.
No, I don't, you know, I don't really have time at all to do anything. And, you know, that time I do have, I try and spend it at home. So yeah, having this moment to kind of pause and stop, you know, I know it was hard for a lot of people, but for me, you know, this came out of it, and I feel very fortunate for that. And it's really good. And I was looking at pictures that I hadn't seen for like 30 years.
Wow.
You know, and I was seeing them with completely different eyes. And what was interesting, again, it was a roll of film that only had 12 frames. So it's very interesting when you look at the contact sheets, because each frame is kind of considered. And what I'm being true to when I do the book and the exhibition is every single image that I print and is printed in the book is full frame. Nothing's cropped. Everything is seen. It's true. So it's how my eye saw it. So, but yeah, it was a lot of work getting through it all, but I'm getting there eventually.
Oh, wow. Well, I hope you've got someone to help scan everything in.
Yeah, slowly but surely. Yeah. So this chap. Yeah, well, you mentioned all the GQ covers, and I think there's over 40 British GQ. There's been over 40 of them.
Wow.
I've been shooting for them for a long time. But yeah, probably people are like, oh, you know, what's your favorite GQ cover? And you know, people immediately expect you to say some famous person, but there might be a lot of people that are looking at this that don't even know who this chap is. And you know, this is Sir Captain Tom Moore, who at the very beginning of the pandemic, he decided, you know, at 99 years of age, before he reached 100, he wanted to walk lengths of his garden and raise money for the NHS. And when he announced that, it got documented, and before you know it, he couldn't stop. And and he did, I think he did like 100 laps of his garden, and he raised over, I think it was over like 33 million pounds for the NHS, which is just like staggering. And now I think there's even like a a Captain Tom Day, and he was knighted by the Queen, and he was just this legend. And when I went, after I left the log cabin and decided to go back to England for a little bit, the first chap that I got to photograph when I went back to England was Sir Captain Tom Moore, and it was really, really special to, you know, photograph this gentleman. And you know, sadly, he's no longer with us, which is, you know, it's really, really sad. But you know, I got to meet him, and he was one of the GQ Men of the Year. And this particular image, you know, I always do a lot of research into my shots, and I found this photograph of an old Civil War soldier, and he was sat in this chair in a very grand way, and he had this flag draped across him, and I just loved just the simplicity of that flag and how it was draped.
Yeah. So,
you know, we got him to put on his tuxedo, and I got a flag, and I just sort of replicated that image and draped it over him in this very sort of, you know, very.
It's such a memorable image, and especially even if you don't know who Captain Sir Tom Moore is, you kind of get the idea of who he was, as in, like, because he's got his medals, he's obviously got the British flag on him, and like I just remember like reading about this online whilst being over here about him in the UK, and I was just like, oh my god, like it really does show you how people do kind of come together in times of despair. And he wanted, not only did he serve in the war, but he wanted to continue like serving, like doing something for his country, which is obviously the NHS, which is in disarray at the moment, which we won't go into too much about. But yeah, it's such a strong kind of image without him necessarily being strong as a person. Like he's what, 99 years old, and you know, but he just looks so joyful, and he's got a lot of pride in his face.
But and I think, you know, his face, he still has that great youth in his face and his cheeky little smile. And then what made it even more special is this photograph is now on the walls of the Imperial War Museum in Duxford. You know, it was I donated it to them, and now it's going to be living in that museum forevermore, which makes it, you know, even more special. And then there was another image that went with it. So this shot here, that's the path that, you know, he walked up and down 100 times, and that was his walker that he, you know, walked up and down the path with. And then for this shot, you know, I just wanted to turn him into a superhero. And obviously, you know, as soon as you think of a superhero, you think of a cape. So it was as simple as that. It was just getting a British flag and draping it over his shoulders and having him stand there and, you know, sort of instant superhero. So that was, you know, that was the idea behind that image.
It's such a simple idea. Like, yeah, he is a superhero, so let's drape the flag over him like a cape. Like, but it's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah, he looks very, very grand there. He's very proud. Very proud. So I think now I'm just going to go into a range of different images that have some stories. Oh, there he is with his. He always just love a bit of tea and cake, like most of. So that was a little shot of him in his chair. He's every old man always has his chair. So this was as I'm sure
this was in his home.
Yeah, this was in his home. You know, in his chair where he's, you know, he spends a lot of time, you know, with a little bit of traditional, you know, tea and cake, very English.
I love me a cherry bakewell.
So now this was actually another shoot for GQ. This is Mr. Taron Egerton, who I've worked with on many, many times. But yeah, this was, I think, just before Rocket Man was coming out. I'd worked on Rocket Man with him.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, hey, T, let's get you a GQ cover. So we kind of, you know, had a chat with GQ, and we lined up this cover. And I didn't want to, you know, obviously he'd spent, you know, a year, you know, in all these crazy Elton John costumes, and I'm sure the last thing he wanted to be is, you know, covered in feathers on the cover of GQ. So it was that thing to sort of bring some kind of color and sort of, you know, a little of that kind of campness to it, but without, you know, over egging it. So with all the images, I shot it all just simply with neon lights, and this one was was actually what ended up being the cover, one of the covers. And what was interesting about this, and it wasn't planned, is that neon star is in front of him and I'm shooting through it, and there, you know, keying the the eyes is just this perfect star that's in his eyes. And that was something that just wasn't planned. It just happened, but it definitely makes the image. It's just to have that catch light that's like this perfect star. So sometimes you just get gifted these little things that happen that were definitely not planned. So,
it's almost like he's got a bit of Elton John's character, like in his eyes. Like they could be those big sunglasses that he always wears, but without him having to play the character on the cover of GQ, he's like, you know,
he wore many glasses, that's for sure, at some point. And then in contrast to this, the end of that year, we were shooting again more people for the Men of the Year issue. And whenever we do the Men of the Year issue, the talent is always wearing tuxedos. So it's always a challenge every year. Okay, gentlemen in the tuxedo, we're going to do. So they were celebrating the success of Rocket Man, and they gave Taran one of the Men of the Year awards. So I had this crazy idea, I don't know why, but I wanted to set fire to a piano and do this shot with a piano. So I did, you know, set fire to a piano for real. He's not standing there whilst it's on fire, but there was definitely fire around him when it was shot. But one thing I did find out is, you know, we have tight budgets to work with, you know, British GQ, they're not big budgets. And trying to get a grand piano that you could set on fire is nigh impossible, because, you know, normally black pianos are piano black. But I did find out that you could buy a cheap old brown piano and then just get a can of spray paint and paint it black. So that's what we did. So that was definitely some old brown piano that someone was throwing out, and we just covered it in a bit of spray paint, and suddenly it looked grand. Especially when you set fire to it. So
how did he feel having fire around him while you're taking this picture?
So there's another picture that was, I think it was the cover, where he's kind of leaning on this piano and he's got fire behind him. And I used this pyrotechnics guy in England called Bob Smoke.
Is that his real name?
Yeah, well, that's the name he goes by.
Okay.
He's definitely a little sketchy. I don't think you'd get away with it in LA. He walks around with like a tin of like a tin of petrol, and he has like a rolled up cigarette in his mouth, and you'd be like, no, that's gasoline and rolled up fags don't really go together. But yeah, I think Taran was looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? And publicist was like, why are we in the depths of East London doing this shoot? And I'm like, well, why do you think we can't be in the middle of Soho? I'm about to set a piano on fire. So yeah, she trusted me, and he just thinks I'm mad, but I think it's because he's known me for quite a long time now. But yeah, that was the result. But people are like, yeah, whatever, it's all done it. No, but yeah, we set fire to a piano, and it was fun. There'll be more fire as we get into this. There's more fire. There'll be more fire coming.
I guess you need that trust from your talent to kind of like live out these kind of elaborate photo shoots. I mean, I don't know how he would feel if you just met. Like,
I've convinced quite a lot of people to do things that maybe they look back on and they're not so sure about. But yeah, it's all part of the game. Okay, then something completely different. This was another shoot for GQ. This is with Anthony Joshua, the heavyweight boxing champ. Well, no, he's not quite. Well, yeah, he's a heavyweight boxing champion. And this was a shoot with him and his son that was done in this house in London. But what was interesting about this is it was all just shot on a phone. It was at the time Condé Nast were doing something with Google, and we did this shoot with a Google Pixel phone, which I was asked to do. And immediately you're like, oh God, really? Got to do a shoot with a phone for a magazine. And it's not just, you know, an inside shoot, it's a cover shoot as well. So you're a little concerned about this, but it kind of worked out for the better in a way, because, you know, this young JJ, his little boy, you know, he doesn't love having his picture taken. And I'm sure if I rocked up with a camera and a bunch of lights and this and that, he would have been gone in a second. And you know, I kind of, you know, we sort of hung out, and I just had this phone, and I'm just there with them, and I think it just made me a little bit more acceptable to that, you know, environment of the two of them. And you know, and AJ was so sort of, you know, willing to have some fun and mess about with his little boy, and we just, again, it was like that thing of, yeah, suddenly a phone was actually really maybe the right device for this shoot, because it just made me slightly more invisible.
Yeah.
And it wasn't this whole thing. And then, yeah, and then there was a moment like this. I think this was definitely a point where his son was just so over this, didn't want to have his picture taken. And here he is, you know, with his dad, who's this mountain of a man. And suddenly there's just this intimate little moment that happened between the two of them, which is a shot that, you know, you don't really see Anthony Joshua like this, you know, that's for sure. And it was just something that just happened, and it ended up being on the subscribers cover of the magazine. And it's just this really simple image between a father and son, and
it's so powerful as well. It's
cool.
like,
and again, shot on a phone. So,
I never would have guessed it.
yeah, there we go.
Oh.
So that was that. Okay, this was at the time when, yeah, Michael B. Jordan had Black Panther was coming out. So at that time, you know, I did a bit of research, thought, you know what, let's base this all on, you know, on the Black Panthers, on Malcolm X, and that whole thing. So we did this shoot in LA, and we put this storyboard together, you know, put it to him, and he just, you know, embraced this whole thing. So the car that he's actually sitting in there, I can't remember the actual model, but it is the same model of car that Malcolm X owned, you know, at one time. So that was pretty cool. And obviously the classic Ray-Bans, and which I'm sure Ray-Ban were extremely happy, and a beret. And then I had this idea to do this stuff with projection. So this is all in camera. So this is just, you know, against a wall with, you know, a projector on him, all in camera. And then there was a film that I made, which the projection sort of comes to life, which became more of the narrative. And this, again, it's that sort of very, you know, that, you know, it references, you know, Malcolm X. That's very strong, simple lighting. And again, here, back with the projection. But he was really good. He really embraced the whole creative. And that's, you know, the whole thing with a lot of this you know, why editorial is so important. And, you know, we put together this mood board, you know, it gets sent to the publicist, it gets sent to him, you know, he comes, we go through it, and it's very much a collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, you work together and you create these images, and it's something between the, you know, the photographer, you know, and the talent.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the time, you know, we get commissioned to do these commercial jobs, and it's okay, yeah, this is what we want. Here's a drawing, here's a thing, here's an idea, just capture that. Where, you know, editorial, it's very much, you know, the photographer's idea, and that's, you know, that's, I think, you know, I still shoot as much editorial as I can today, because it's what keeps you fresh.
Yeah.
Sure.
Was there ever a shoot idea that you were so sure would work, but the subject maybe refused, or maybe the editor refused? You don't have to tell us what it was, but yeah.
Yeah, no, there has been, for sure. But I think, you know, but then maybe, you know, there's been times where, you know, I've come in with an idea, for whatever reason, it hasn't got to the talent on the actual shoot day. Maybe they're not into the idea, but then, you know, they'll suggest something, and that could well be better. And then suddenly you just got to, you know, turn it around and think on your feet and make that happen. And I think, you know, you only need, a lot of the time, you only need one or two really good pictures. And it's a team effort, you know, it's a collaboration. I think as much as they might not like what you like, you should hear them out. And maybe, you know, their idea is better, and you want them for them to feel that, you know, they're as much a part of it as you are.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Oh.
See what else is coming up. This was, again, you know, a very simple idea that was very effective. Christoph Waltz, who, you know, is everything he's so, when I watched him as an actor, everything he does is so precise and so perfect in every way. And I knew that, you know, going about the shoot, I just had this idea that I wanted to do something with mirrors.
Okay.
And put these mirrors up and kind of create tunnels with mirrors and this thing. And I knew that just by watching him acting, the way that he would act with these mirrors would have that precision. And the two just married like so well. These were just shot on a roof in Los Angeles, again, natural light.
Amazing.
And it was just about positioning these mirrors around, and, you know, and how he would interact with them. And he was, you know, just every little movement. It's Christoph Waltz, and mirrors and Christoph Waltz, they work together.
Yeah. He's like very kind of, from what I can tell from these images, like he's very curious about what's going on with, like, essentially it's a mirror, but like he looks so curious about it, and like you say, like he's very precise as to like where he's standing and where he's looking, and, you know, he's like, it looks like he's really getting into it. Like
he gets it. He's engaged. He knows what's going on, and he understood it. And he, you know, he bought his thing to these images. There's a lot more, but these are just a few of them. Oh, this chap. Okay, so so this particular year we did a GQ Men of the Year. Everyone was in white tuxedos. So one of the subjects was Mark Hamill. So immediately I was like, Mark Hamill, white tuxedo, get this man a cape. So I called up the stylist, and I was like, right, I need you to make me a cape for Mark Hamill. And he did. And then in the studio, I just had this idea that I kind of wanted him to walk on this surface that just sort of looked like ice or water. And I literally just bought a roll of Mylar, you know, on Amazon, had it delivered to the studio, and just rolled out a sheet of Mylar on the floor. And he's walking across this Mylar, and that's lit with a big hot light, I think like a 10K or 20K.
Right.
And that pattern that you see on the back wall is literally the light that's bouncing off of the Mylar, onto that back wall. So it was.
I thought it was one of those painted backgrounds.
It was weird. It was just this like cement background, but then when the light hit the shiny Mylar, it did all these like mad reflections on the back, and so that was that. And he kind of, we did this moment, and then in some crazy thing, when he sat down for some of his portraits, I had this mad idea. I think it was more of a behind the scenes thing, that I wanted to paint with light, you know, while shooting his portrait. And I was like, oh, what's a really good thing to paint with light with? A lightsaber. so I literally went out and I bought like a blue lightsaber, and he's sitting there. And I was like, okay, just hold still. And I went around the back and I pulled out this lightsaber and lit it up. And he was just like, you are absolutely mad. And I was painting light with this lightsaber. Wow. It was just, so I had these like, blue strips, and I'm like moving them around, and so there we go. So I had, you know, my kind of childhood, teenage fandom kind of came through, and I've got this photograph of him and I having a lightsaber battle against each other, which is amazing. You know,
that's epic. Like, you're literally a Jedi in your own right.
Star Wars moment. I lived it. So that was really special. This is quite cool. So this was a shoot with, and these sort of situations happen a lot. So here I am doing a shoot with Ed Harris. This was for L'Uomo Vogue, and typical thing, they go, right, you got 30 minutes with Ed Harris. You're going to shoot him in the hotel conference room, and you're like, whatever.
And they're all boring.
You turn up at the hotel, they put you in a conference room. You're like, what the hell am I going to do in here? He's going to come out in a tuxedo. So I look around the room, and that night or that afternoon, they'd had like a banquet, and they had all these fold-up tables, these round fold-up tables. So I just folded them all up, threw them against the wall, and that's the set.
Wow.
So what you're seeing there is just a bunch of tables with their legs behind those tables. And I've just like unfolded them up, put them against the wall, and done that. So, you're in this situation where you're in this room, and it's a bit like uninspiring, and you look around, and then that was it, and it's just there. And obviously, you know, I shot this with some high-speed flash, and I got him to flick some water, which just really makes this image. But you know, you can see the tables here as well, so it's just like instant set design. And
yeah,
just,
and like are all the tables black, or that's
they're all the same, it's just how the light's hitting it, so that's it.
amazing.
Really.
It looks like a full-on set, like you could have been in a
Yeah.
studio with a set designer and everything.
No, that's
no,
it. So
hotels and
if you go
tables.
to that particular hotel in LA, you can recreate this picture with $0. So that was that. Okay, God, this particular, so Ridley Scott. So it's got quite an interesting little story behind it. So this was his portrait that was taken for BAFTA when he got his Lifetime Achievement Award.
Oh, wow.
So I went to his offices in LA to take his portrait. I did a few different little setups. And then I had this idea that I just wanted, there's this photographer called Karsh, who I absolutely love. And he has this very famous portrait of Hemingway, which he'd shot, and it's this roll neck. And I love this picture. And I sort of had this idea in my head that that's how I wanted to shoot Ridley Scott. And, but it's shot with very kind of old Hollywood, like hard lights. And I didn't have any of those lights with me, but I had literally like a few like flash mag lights in my camera bag. So I was holding one, and my assistant was holding 2 other mag lights. So this was just lit with a few mag lights, and they were really, really bright.
Wow.
And then after it, he looked at the image and he was like, it looks like that shot Karsh, Hemingway. Oh, I was like, that's why you're Ridley Scott. You know, he got it straight away, reference. But then he also said to me, damn, those lights are really bright. I just had LASIK surgery last week. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be the man that's just blinded Ridley Scott. But,
oh my gosh.
So that was, that's
wow. My heart
probably was great that he got the reference straight away. And it was just, again, look, it was just a few mag lights that I had kicking around in my camera bag. Which
amazing.
Which is cool.
Like, it just goes to show, like, even when you say don't have any inspiring locations, or you don't really have any budget, like what you can pull together like really quickly, it just looks like a full production. And I kind of miss that sometimes when you're shooting and you're like, well, no, we need this and we need that and we need this, and I'm like, can I not just go out with my camera and just see what happens? And
yeah, for sure. Sometimes some of the best moments, for sure. Okay, wow, yeah, this picture. So here's another actually good example. So this is I was doing this portfolio for GQ. It's called we have this event called GQ Heroes, where a bunch of talent, they come to Soho Farmhouse for a couple of days and they do these talks. And I was fortunate enough for a couple of years to shoot this portfolio. And on this particular year, I decided to shoot it with all these old cameras that I own. So I've got a, Rolleiflex, Graflex, I shot it all on film. And, with my Graflex in particular, it's one shot and it's done. So, that's it. You've just got that one shot wonder. And I was so excited to shoot Michaela Cole. She's got such an incredible face. But I looked at a lot of her images, and everyone always shoots her in this very kind of hard, stern, strong sort of way. How a lot of the time, say someone like Grace Jones was photographed, because she has that great strength about her. But I didn't really see, out of all the portraits, any of just giving this big like laugh. And I got this Graflex and I took this frame, and and she did this laugh, and I got the frame, and that was it. And it was just that one frame, but I knew that I got what I wanted. And it was really nice to kind of go into it wanting that, and I came out the other side, and it's just about in focus in the right place. But it doesn't have to be in focus. It's it's
I love it. And you can kind of tell, like, as well, like she maybe like wants to be seen in a slightly different way, and this is perfect. It's like, I'm always photographed in the same way, and here comes Gavin. It's just like, oh yeah, let's switch it up a bit. Nice. I love it.
Well, God, these couple of chaps. Again, yeah, this was a shoot for GQ with John Cooper Clarke, who's an amazing poet, and Van Morrison, the musician. And I'd done portraits of them in the hotel prior to this, individual shots. And then I did these shots of them walking down the street together. And then I just wanted this sort of moment of the two of them together. And, unbeknown to them, outside the hotel, I put these 2 deck chairs there, which the hotel owned, but this was in the middle of the autumn. There's not the time to have deck chairs outside the hotel. And on the table there, I put 2 pints of Guinness. And as they were walking back to go into the hotel, I was like, gents, can I get this quick shot of you sat in these deck chairs? And they sat down. They were like, oh, but we don't drink. So I was like, oh, damn, what are we going to do? So I did this shot of the two of them together here, and it just feels this sort of real kind of laughing moment between the two of them. I think we were probably talking about the fact that they don't drink anymore. Yeah. And then when they left, I just switched out the pints of Guinness for a cup of tea and shot the cup of tea. So when they were sat there was Guinness there, but when they left, I replaced it with tea.
Okay.
So they were happy. So there was a little bit of there's not all truth in that image.
Yeah. Well, it looks seamless.
Oh, here we go. More fire. There's a good story coming up here.
Okay.
So this was Charlie Sheen, in his moment of true Sheenness, and on this particular shoot, I decided to set him on fire. It was for a cover of Newsweek, actually. So we had a different stuntman. This is actually a guy in LA who goes by the name of Chris Crispy. So there we go. We got,
oh my gosh.
Got Bob Smoke in London, Chris Crispy in LA. So they both had matching suits on, and Chris, we set his suit on fire. So there is really someone on fire behind that suit. And there's actually a really fun online video on my site, a behind the scenes video, which shows all this going down, which is pretty interesting.
Wow.
And we set all that on fire, and then there's this, very zen-like moment. But the best thing that came out of all of this, well, 2 good things, is I think it was a shoot in LA, and I had to get back to New York, and I really didn't want to get the red eye to go back for this job. Yeah. And I had a call with Charlie Sheen about this shoot, and we were chatting about what we were going to do. And he was like, I promise you, I won't be late. You won't have to get the red eye. So I'm at this shoot, I'm waiting. Of course, he's late. Turns up in his Maybach. He's like, sorry I'm late. I'm like, it's cool. He's like, but I got you a gift. I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, do you like wine? I'm like, yeah. So he pulls out this bottle of incredible wine, gifts that to me. And then the best part of it, of all that, he's like, and I went to my dad's and I borrowed this. You can take a photograph of me in it. And he pulls me into the dressing room, puts down this hat box. And I'm like, what the hell? You're like, what are you doing? And he pulls this out and he's like, this is my dad's helmet from Apocalypse Now. He's like,
no way.
Yeah, put us on this helmet. I'm like, okay. So there we go. So look, Charlie Sheen can be late anytime he wants, because I got a really nice bottle of wine, and I got to shoot him in his dad's helmet from Apocalypse Now. So
that is incredible. He's like, oh yeah, let me just go and nip this from my dad's wardrobe.
Yeah, I know. That's why he was even later, I'm sure. But anyway, probably
like, Dad, where is it?
Okay, this is
amazing.
This is something interesting that just happened. Actually, it was so when was it? God, when Bond came out, which wasn't too long ago, the most recent one. I was in New York, and it was really, really, really bad weather. And I got this phone call to, like, the cast are in New York. We want you to shoot the cast of James Bond. And we want you to photograph them for National James Bond Day. And I'm like, it's a joke. Okay, shoot the cast. So I have this whole idea, and we're going to shoot them up on this roof in New York with, New York City behind. And it was going to be this big, elaborate shoot.
Yeah.
And we all went up onto the roof of this hotel in New York, and it is probably the worst weather I've ever experienced as a photographer. We had umbrellas being blown inside out. It was like Wizard of Oz up on this roof. And it was really, really sketchy, to the point where it got really dangerous.
Oh, no.
And literally Daniel turned around. We'd taken like 2 frames at that point, and he was like, "We can't shoot up here. It's just too dangerous." So we came off the roof. We went into a bar downstairs, and I literally took like a couple of snapshots in this bar, and then they went off to do this film screening. But it's funny. It was, what was going to be this really elaborate shoot on the roof of this hotel just turned into this sort of fun, 10 minutes in this bar downstairs. But it's still, I've got this image, which I think, it's a really great sort of intimate, simple image, of them, which is great, and it doesn't have to be this big elaborate shoot. And that was, you just got to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Get on with it at times.
I think it's amazing.
It's the first time I was rained out though. So, I was.
It's very James Bond.
Yeah. And this one, this with Sir Anthony Hopkins, this was the most recent GQ Men of the Year shoot. Again, this was shot in LA. Again, obviously he's wearing a tuxedo.
Yeah.
But, we all know a lot about Anthony Hopkins, but maybe not everyone knows that he's the most incredible piano player. He writes music, and he's incredible. He has this whole other side to him. Apart from being one of the greatest actors of our generation, he does this as well. So again, with this shoot, I researched and made sure that I found a venue that had a tuned piano.
Yeah.
And I based the whole shoot around this piano. And and there's a little film that I made, and he's playing the piano, and I just think here you look at this shot and it's so genuine. You look at his face and he's really enjoying, what's happening here, and just to be in his presence for a few hours and to, watch this man, perform. He was incredible. And but yeah, it was doing this research and finding out about this other side of him, and that's what really made this shoot.
And sure. How did you when you say you did your research, how did you know he was a piano player? Was it something that, because
it came from his Instagram account,
Oh, okay.
I didn't follow him at the time, but when I heard I was going to be shooting him, I went onto his Instagram and all that appeared. Not only that, but I found that he had a TikTok account and he was dancing to Drake. So
no way.
He had a TikTok account and he was dancing to Drake. So I was like, okay, I need to get this gentleman to play the piano and dance. And from doing my research, he did both. But yeah, his spirit is, I think he's like 82 now. His spirit is incredible. If I'm anything like him at that age, it would be something special. The way he looks at life and how he is, it's really, really special. Dancing to Drake at 82 years old.
He is literally living life, like literally.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so again, there's a magazine that I shoot for quite a bit called Jocks and Nerds. And the reason I love shooting for jocks is because it's never obvious. It's for them, it's, I can go to them and say, look, there's someone I really, really want to photograph. And it doesn't have to be the latest and greatest person. So at this particular time, there was this gentleman, Scott Glenn, who's a legend. And I really wanted to shoot him. And I happened to know his publicist through some other talent that she represented. And I spoke to her and said, look, I want to shoot Scott. What do you think? And we sent him some copies of the mag and he really liked it. And he invited me out to Idaho. So I just went to Idaho with a friend of mine and a trunk of clothes. Didn't go with any assistants, no hair, no makeup. It was just me, my friend with some clothes, and Scott. And we hung out in his backyard for a couple of days and took these pictures. And everything is natural light. And what I did when I shot this as well, I think I had a Nikon camera that I put an 85mm lens on, and I had my Leica Q2, which is a fixed 28, and I only used those. So I only used 2 lenses for the whole time that I shot this.
Oh wow.
And I never changed. And it was a really nice way of, you know, just working rather, you know, getting caught up in any sort of technical stuff. It's just, look, 2 cameras, one's long, one's wide, shot them both with pretty shallow depths of field, and that was it. And it was just lovely to just take these pictures.
Are these all in? This is his back garden.
No, well, it's Idaho. You know, it's one big old backyard. You know, that's for sure. But yeah, he's a bit of an expert with a blade.
Oh wow.
So he was willing to take this picture, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, it was a great way of working.
It's so nice to just, you know, not have all the bells and whistles of production, like just again taking it back to grassroots, and it's just about what your eye is seeing in the moment. Yeah,
for sure. And again, like, you know, I think I was doing some portraits of Ron Howard in a studio, and the magazine were like, hey, you know, I think the editor of the photo editor or whatever was on their way to the studio, and they were like, oh, see if you can get some kind of behind the scenes kind of pictures, you know, as well as these portraits. I was like, yeah. And they turned up about an hour later, like, do you get it? And I was like, yeah, you know, Ron and I just went and rode the subway for 10 minutes. So, you know, we went outside, we got on the subway, and we just kind of rode the subway with a camera and took a few snaps. There was a lot more, and they were like, what? And the last thing they expected was to see the 2 of us. We just went and hung out on the subway for 5 minutes. But, you know, Ron didn't care. And yeah, it just made for these kind of more real moments, which was cool. Okay, so yeah, this shoot was the shoot with Idris for Playboy. Again, we shot in this boxing club. But what was really great about this particular shoot, you know, we did these sort of more set up images. You know, we're in this boxing club, and all the kids that are in there kind of hanging out are sort of winding them up a little bit. And I'm like, come on. I'm like, you know, you lot, Idris, just get in the ring, have a little punch up. And before you knew it, I convinced him to, you know, they gave him some shorts and a vest, and he got in the ring and had a little punch up. And these were the best shots by far. And he left there exhausted. I think these kids gave him the runaround, but he can look after himself. But
okay.
But again, this is never planned. You know, it's just someone being, you know, just a real person, and we're just you know, hanging out. And he's like, yeah, why not? Let's get in and just have a little tussle and see what happens. And you know, that's what, you know, these pictures are what made that shoot.
Yeah.
You know, but never planned at all.
Do you feel like you're at ease when you're not sure what's going to happen? Like, do you find that that's when you create your best work, when you don't know exactly what's there and what's going to happen, and you just say one thing and then all of a sudden that he's in the ring and you're like...
I think so. I think, you know, as much as, you know, understanding the technicalities and what comes into a picture, it's a bunch about that and you and the talent and your relationship. And it doesn't have to be people that I know. You know, I think it's just, you know, how them feeling comfortable with you, and again, them wanting to take some cool pictures and have some fun, and then having that trust in you that you're going to capture that moment and not, you know, and then, God, now we're going to really I just saw what was coming. So there was a period where I used to shoot a ton of comedy, loads of comedy. It doesn't happen as much now, but this was, Mr. James Corden, who I've shot many, many times. And literally this shot was him, you know, on a lilo in the pool, and his hairdresser at the time, he was on the side of the pool, and he just swam out into the middle of the pool on a surfboard to do James's hair. And it was just this mad sort of situation that just happened, not planned whatsoever. But that was the picture, you know, and you've got this, you know, this hairdresser. I don't quite know how he's going to do his hair, but
he's like holding the surfboard.
It might definitely be a challenge because he's only got 2 arms. But
do you ever find that when these situations happen and you're like, wow, like that's the picture, do you find that you have to carry on shooting because you've got like a whole crew there, or you're like, okay, no, that's it, we're done for the day, because I've got it, like.
Yeah, I think when you really know you've got it, and then just stop, because
just stop.
They want an easy day. This was that artist, Mr. Brainwash, who, I did this crazy shoot with paint, and this is all in camera. It's just mad.
Wow.
He just sat there, and he was willing to stay still, and I just had people throw paint at him. Literally that. And so that big strips of paint, just people just throwing buckets of paint at him, and it's quite cool because I animated the whole thing afterwards. But that was something that was kind of cool.
And how did you know he was going to be okay with that, or you just did it?
He's kind of out there. I knew he'd be fine with it. Talking about there, these three guys. This was obviously the guys from Jackass, which this is quite timely because their new film's just come out. But so this was for Vanity Fair, and the idea was to shoot them as the Three Stooges, which they completely embraced. And I remember being on the phone with Johnny Knoxville, and he was telling me, look, I've got this trash can, and it explodes, and I fly up in the air, and it's this thing, and we didn't use it in the film, and and I'm like, this is mad. So I find this location, and he's got this trash can that you sit on, and then you fly up in the air because there's like dynamite underneath it. And I think he did it like 3 times and nearly broke his arm and both his legs. And he was like, have you got it? And I'm like, yeah, I've definitely got it. And he'd be like, no, let's do it again. Wow. I'm like, these guys are completely bonkers. But yeah, that was
wow.
Quite cool.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, were there no crash mats or anything to catch him? He was just willing to
I think there's a crash mat there under Steve-O, which I took out in post.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's really on a flying trash can.
Oh,
which
man.
was this was another mad comedy day with Will Ferrell, who I've shot quite a few times. We're in West Hollywood, and we just decide to run around West Hollywood and do all these kind of crazy situations. And we spoke them, I think, 3 or 4 days prior, and we kind of talked about these scenarios. So in this particular shot, this Hollywood tour bus, no one on this bus knew what was going on, apart from the guy in the back row, the chap in the green shirt. He's actually the creative director of the magazine.
Oh, okay.
So he put himself in this thing, and those glasses that he's wearing have a hidden camera built in, which was all kind of planned. So he's filming this journey with all these guys talking about just driving around Hollywood, and they pull up at this bus stop, and Will Ferrell's waiting there. So this was all planned and rigged, and made this film sort of behind it. And then the first thing we decided to do was to go to this tattoo parlor because he was going to have a baby tattoo. But this is actually the tattoo artist baby.
Okay.
But when we were doing this, just as we were finished, the cops turned up because they had reports there was a baby getting a tattoo done. So it got a bit sketchy. And then this on the left, that's my producer's car. That's just in the street in Hollywood. That's in the studio at Coyote, at the photo studio that we're doing. This was just at some bar. There's a whole load more of them. Oh, and then this is crazy. So we're in the tattoo shop. Yeah. No word of a lie. Obviously, this guy knew that Will Ferrell was coming. So the tattoo artist obviously called one of his mates to come down for this shot.
Yeah.
And he had a tattoo of Will Ferrell on his leg.
No way.
Yeah, semi-pro. So here he's got Scarface on one part of his leg and semi-pro Will Ferrell on the other. I don't quite understand what's going on with this leg, but it was mental. Like, and neither Will or I knew about this, and here we are, and this just happened, which is.
I love it. So many impromptu situations that are just making like
just sort of got gifted to us. And then I ended up at an old people's home pretending to celebrate this lady's 100th, but and I went to the old people's home the night before and convinced these ladies to do this picture. They didn't even know Will Ferrell was. But they were more than willing. And then the next day we turned up and we did this, and she's lighting a cigarette with that.
I absolutely am loving the lady on the right. Her blue ring, her printed outfit.
Yeah, she's pretty genius.
Yeah.
Yeah. we'll get that's just a little film, but we'll skip past that. This was, again, God, I used to shoot a ton of these portfolios for Entertainment Weekly for many, many years. And sadly, I heard today it's no longer going to be in print, which is just crazy.
It's shocking. I don't understand what.
Yeah, it's such a shame. It was such a huge part of my life. And, you know, I owe so much to that magazine, and so many great memories and so many great shoots. And it's really sad that it's no more. But this particular one was a shoot with, you know, Jon Stewart. We decided to shoot him as a ringmaster. And at the time, you know, through all this political madness, God, there's been a few presidents since then. It was a while ago. You know, they were going to get lookalikes of everyone. And the lookalikes were rubbish. Right. And at that time in England, we used to have that great puppet show, Spitting Image.
Yeah.
And I was talking to people about that, and I said, look, I bet you if we look into it, we can get masks of all these people that we want for this picture. And we did, and we researched it, and we got masks, and it kind of, so it was a little kind of nod to Spitting Image, but it kind of made this image even more sort of high camp.
Yeah,
you know?
I love it.
And another great EW image, you know, this, it's like Stephen Colbert. So I was like, what do we do? Okay, I want him in bed with Lady Liberty.
Wow.
So what did we do? Where do we find Lady Liberty? You find her on Liberty Island. So we went to Liberty Island. We found there's this woman that stands there all day long, really still.
Oh, like the people doing
Covent Garden? The people in Covent Garden.
Right.
Or, you get them in Times Square.
That's it.
That paint themselves, pretend to be the person. So we hired her, the real deal. And then we made her these little accessories, and we painted them and put them by the side of the bed, and that was it. And then I remember she left the studio, and she was standing in the street hailing a cab. It was like the maddest thing. But yeah, that was a good creative one. Another one, this was Key and Peele. This was for Vanity Fair, just based off of like sort of Laurel and Hardy kind of capers. But they were just some wooden girders that we set up in a studio, and then I just shot that plate of New York.
Oh wow!
Background. So this this set of images. How are we doing for time? Are we all right? Is anyone still here?
Yeah, everyone's still here. We've only had like maybe 2 drop off, but yeah, the majority of everyone is still here. Send through your questions if you have any, guys. Like, we've got time for questions as well. So
yeah. I'll talk about these for a minute. So this portfolio was done for Out Magazine, and I used to shoot for Out Magazine a lot, and I shot a portfolio for them that was very elaborate. It was every picture was lit. It was this whole kind of concept, and it was really well received. And then they came to me again and said, look, we'd love you to shoot a portfolio for Out. And I said, look, I'd love to do it, but I want to strip everything back. Again, I just want to shoot it with available light. Just me. It was with my Leica Q, and I just went in without, you know, a whole crew and stuff, and it was just more these sort of intimate, simple images that were shot. So this was, you know, I was taking these pictures of Tom Ford at Milk, and in much convincing, we kind of ended up in this situation. And I took this picture, and it's a very simple image. This is me and Pedro Almodovar just having a bottle of wine in a bar in London, just hanging out, talking. Wow. And I'm just, you know, taking some shots. And this was Ellen, you know, outside the lot of her studio, you know, on a bike. This is this amazing lady in New York. So they were just very Amanda Nunes. So it was a huge variety of people. But what was really nice about it, it was just very intimate, simple photography. And I didn't really know what I was going to get. A lot of the time I just met these people somewhere. Right. And we just, you know, we took some pictures, and, you know, this one was more, these 2 guys met, they were both British athletes. This was more slightly more set up, but this is just walking through, this actor here, this is just walking through Central Station in LA. So they were just very sort of just simple, you know, images again, but no lights. It's all just what it is. And then the covers, all of this stuff, I shot it all with my Rolleiflex on film, and I shot it all in open shade. So again, these are all daylight, they're just open shade.
Wow.
Images. But it was a really nice way of approaching, you know, I had to photograph 100 people. It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff. It was, you know, shot over quite a big period of time. And then I just threw in a bunch of music stuff just because I do a bit of everything, really. So
I guess it keeps it, like, you know, different, and you're kind of stepping out of your comfort zone all the time, because you're not just kind of in one niche, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen today? I'll do a bit of music, or I'll set someone on fire, or, you know.
Yeah, it's a whole variety. You know, there was a whole period, God, when I left college, that I was just like a full-on fashion photographer. I was, you know, shooting for Elle and Mary Claire and going to all these exotic countries and shooting models in fancy clothes and doing all of that. But that was, you know, I was doing that in my early 20s. And then I guess I sort of moved to New York and started shooting more celebrity-based stuff. But still a variety. It's just, I haven't done still life yet.
Yeah, there we go. That's something to add to your list.
No, it's just, look, it's just, it's people, you know, it's a study of people. I think this was the first time I shot Iggy.
Yeah.
Which was this sort of multiple exposure thing, which again, you know, I had this idea that I wanted to do. And then this was shot in Miami where he lives.
Yeah. We've had a question come in saying, going back to talent, is there any particular person that you know would do absolutely anything for a shot? Do you have that one?
What, the one that I would want to photograph?
Or someone that you know is just open to do anything with you?
Well, the one person who's sadly not with us anymore, but was incredible, was Robin Williams. So yeah, he was, Robin Williams was just everything and everything more. Because you know, when we did this shoot, it was for GQ, it was for a comedy issue. And normally, you know, with these shoots, the talent comes with their hair, their makeup, their publicists, you know, maybe some friends, you know, and they come, and it's this thing. With Robin, I went to San Francisco to shoot him in the studio.
Yeah.
And we had these comedy props at the time. And the idea was we had all these comedy props, and the talent would just come and pick one prop, and they would do impro just with one prop.
Right.
First of all, he came on his own. He never came with anyone. He came with his own suit bag over his shoulder, got changed into his own suit. Was like, what do you want me to do? Saw this table of comedy props and did all of them. not just one, all.
Wow.
And then we made this film, which is this incredible, like, sort of human beatbox thing that we did with all the talent. And I could have made a film just with him. And he did everything and more. And he's a legend and always will be. But yeah, he was. And then we have Lionel Richie in a bathtub.
Could you get more Lionel Richie? I don't think so.
This is the first time, but many times I photographed Lionel, and this was again for a GQ shoot. And I somehow convinced him to get into a bathtub with a glass of whiskey, with some of his hundreds of awards. And I do remember that when we were at the GQ Awards that night, I was with him, and Samuel L. Jackson came over, and he turned around to Samuel L. Jackson and goes, "This is the man that made me sexy." That's what he said to me. So I guess, you know, we've actually become quite good friends since. But I guess he liked these pictures.
I love it. You're like, Lionel, do you mind just getting in the bath for me, please?
No, yeah. A simple, iconic image. This was a shoot that I did with Jay-Z a long time ago for Q magazine.
Yeah.
And this was just lit with like a gobo. That was just
nice.
an American flag gobo. Simple as that. Shot it, bosh. And then afterwards, the shoot, he really liked this picture, and they bought the image and used it for like some t-shirts or stuff for one of the tours that he did or something at that time. So it was cool. Again, very, very simple image, but it says so much. Just with, you know, with just that. Live mute, God, I love, you know, I think it's going all the way back to, you know, how I started taking pictures backstage. because it was just me and just
Yeah.
what my eyes would see. So, you know, shooting live music, there's nothing like it. You know,
Yeah.
I've done it a lot, and these are just a few moments. This is, you know, when Kylie Minogue played Glastonbury.
Oh, amazing.
And this is right before she went on, and she's got her back here to the audience. She's literally got her hand against her mouth, and I think behind her hand she's literally going, fucking hell, because she just couldn't believe, you know, that audience behind her. But it's just that moment, you know.
I think every photographer should shoot live music. I know I've made a couple of really good friends just from being in the pit, and I shot live music just as a way of going to concerts for free, because I was like young and I was just like, oh, I can't afford these tickets. How do I get to watch this show? Yeah. And so, but it's just so magical. Like you, again, you never know what's going to happen.
Oh no, you definitely don't, especially with this guy. So this is Mr. Liam Gallagher. So this is before, and this is after.
Oh wow!
So, there we go. You know, you play in Dublin.
Yeah.
You just make sure that when you play in Dublin, that you have a permanent supply of Guinness backstage. Wow. So that is, yeah. So that was, I can't quite remember the whole weekend, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm not surprised you can't remember.
I love this shot. This was a Black Sabbath concert in Mexico City.
Oh, wow.
I just love that sea of faces. It's like when you see this really big.
Yeah.
It's such a really great. Every time you look at it, you see something else.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
It's like
this is quite a cool little story. So I mentioned earlier that I shot a lot for Q magazine. So one particular time I was commissioned to go and shoot Green Day in their studio.
Yeah.
So I was told, oh yeah, you're gonna have an afternoon with Green Day in the studio. You turn up, manager's like, you got 1 hour. I'm like, oh, God. So I'm like, what do I do? So we're in the studio and I go, like, guys, pretend to go and jam, pretend to do this, pretend to do that. And we did these series of images, and I came away with what I'd got in that hour, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So I made a little book, and I called it Green Day 1 hour, 1 day.
Oh, amazing.
And I sent it to them as a gift. And then I think about 6 months later, the phone rang, and they were like, we're going on a world tour. Do you want to come? And then this happened. And I was, you know, I spent a year on and off traveling the world with these guys, just documenting every movement they made, which, you know, that came from this editorial assignment, you know, and not really knowing these guys, but sort of going that extra mile and making a book. You know, everyone I shoot now, I make a point of like doing a really beautiful print, putting a letter together, sending it to them, and just going that extra mile. And on this particular occasion, yeah, it really paid off. And these have become, you know, they've become friends of mine, and it was a really amazing. It's this journey as a photographer. There's thousands of pictures, but this was a really special, you know, special time to experience that, which was cool.
Nice. Well, we've got some more questions coming in. So I think people are starting to drop off, but the majority are still here. So there's a question about editorial. As we know, like the magazines don't have like the best budgets, and Tim from Australia has asked, can you give us an idea of what sort of budgets you have? Like, is there a budget? Like, how are you convincing your clients to shoot film as well as digital?
Yeah, I think, hi Tim. Look, it varies a lot. Sometimes I literally have zero budget, and you know, I'm having to invest into these shoots, you know, myself a little bit. But it's some of my greatest pictures. I haven't had, you know, a budget. I know now shooting film can be very difficult because it's expensive to shoot film. You know, I went and bought a pack of 120 film the other week, and it's like crazy. Like Kodak have put their prices up. But again, yeah, I might only take that one shot, you know, to get that moment. But look, I started off, you know, I didn't have budgets, you know, at the very beginning. When I left college, I didn't have these great budgets. I've done shoots for, you know, back in the day, you know, when I was being flown all over the world by the likes of, you know, Vanity Fair and Entertainment Weekly and put up in glamorous hotels. It wasn't, you know, and then I look at those pictures for the Out magazine that I just showed, and to me, they're up there. It doesn't have to be this elaborate, big old production. Sometimes I think the simple moments and those images they're the images that I really resonate to. If I was to line up, you know, my greatest pictures, I guarantee you that 9 times out of 10 those pictures would be the most simple images.
Yeah.
You know, it's just getting that moment, you know.
Yeah,
that's what matters for me.
I love it. We've got another question that asks, when a client hires you for a project, what is your first step to finding the inspired narrative?
I like Pinterest now.
No, you did not just admit that.
No, it helps. It helps. Well, look,
Yeah.
Behind me, people can't see this because they're looking at Billy Joe Armstrong right now, but behind me there's books, and I've literally got thousands of books.
Yeah.
I've been collecting coffee table books for a long time. And yeah, before the internet, you know, I was literally going through my coffee table books, just getting ideas, writing stuff down, creating narratives, and film as well. I think, you know, I watch a lot of film, a lot of old films, and I think a lot of ideas come from film as well. And then just things that I just see, and I have like little notebooks where I just sketch down ideas. And yeah, because a lot of my shoots can be, there's definitely a creative going on, you know. And what's been great is, you know, I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of people that have let me kind of dictate that creative, and that's really special.
That's amazing. In terms of like how you started and like where you are now, like did you have any struggles? Were there any? Like, what's been your biggest struggle?
I think one thing is, as you've seen in this work, you know, I do a huge variety of different things. And there's some photographers like, this is me and this is what I do. And they know, okay, this is the person we're going to hire because they just do that one thing. Or I'm like, no, I want to do this. So I've kind of gone off on all these different tangents. But what's made it really great is, you know, I feel really confident now in whatever sort of situation I'm put into. And this journey, you know, now I'm sort of more interested in directing, and I'm getting more into that side of it. So although I've been, I left college in 92, and here we are, 30 years later. And I feel like I've just started, you know.
Okay.
That's the truth. And it's, you know, I've got this book coming out later this year. And like what I said at the beginning is the work's going to be the first time I picked up a camera. And I don't know when Gavin Bond's going to bring his book out, but it's not yet. You know, and now, you know, I don't know, magazines are starting to shut down. Now you've got to start making things move. So,
yeah,
you know, that's the next thing. And I'm getting more into directing now, and I'm enjoying that space and just trying to learn, you know, that side of it all.
Are you learning TikTok? Are you going to get on there?
Well, I will not be. Maybe wait until I'm 82 years old. I'll see.
We go.
Anthony Hopkins will run for his money.
All right, we've got 2 more questions, and then I think
Cool.
we'll wrap it up. Tyler has asked, do you retain the copyright on all your images, and how do you negotiate or bring this topic up with clients?
I wish I did, but sadly I don't. No, I'm with a company actually that's called August, which do all my syndication for me.
Right.
I've been with them for a long time now. So, you know, with an editorial shoot, the pictures that are published in the magazine, they get published in the magazine, but then those images go back to my syndication house. And then if they're used in any other magazines, or if there's any outtakes that are used in any other publications, they have to go to the publicist and ask permission.
Right.
So, you know, that's normally, you know, hopefully they like the pictures, and that's not a problem. But and then normally, you know, when it comes to things like books and exhibitions and all of those things, it's a lot it's a lot easier, you know, to grant permission, because, you know, thankfully that they all want to sort of support the. But you look, I do make money from syndication for sure. But again, it's all about, you know, getting that one picture that is suddenly like, that's the picture that everyone wants, and it's syndicated and you see it everywhere. But yeah, it's you know, definitely owning complete copyright and everything these days is definitely a challenge for sure.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay, so last question we've got is Eric has noticed that there's a lot of landscapes on your Instagram account, and he's asking, can we expect a book of all your work? I think he means landscapes. Are you going to do like a book on landscapes? Like,
I'm not sure. I think, you know, maybe it's just referring to the whole variety of my work, but eventually there'll be like my book of all my different photography. But if you're maybe talking as well about the format, it's weird. It's like, I don't like, when I was shooting, if I shoot 35mm, I can never turn the camera around.
Okay.
If I do, I'm like, oh, I don't know why. I can only hold a camera that way. I don't, as soon as I turn it around, I don't see that. If ever I shoot, and it was, say, a single page image, I'd always shoot this, but just shoot the middle.
Right.
Because the format of 35mm, I just don't like when it's vertical. I only ever see horizontal. I guess because that's, you sort of look like this, I suppose, as opposed to like, I don't know. It's just a thing. I'm just like, but now it's funny, I've gone back now to like the 645 format that for all my studio shoots, I've now shooting with this Fuji GFX 100 camera.
Oh, amazing.
But for my studio shoots, I've gone back to like the format that I started shooting at the very beginning. So it's quite nice. So suddenly it's been like reintroduced to my old camera 30 years later. It's literally, I've only been shooting with this camera for like 3 months, and it's the first time I've shot that format for like 30 years.
Oh wow. And it's just still your original camera, you didn't replace it or anything?
No, sorry, I'm now shooting with a digital camera that shoots the same aspect ratio, which is 645, which is an amazing aspect ratio because it's very much sort of the shape of a magazine or whatever. You know, when you shoot 35, for example, you always end up pretty much cropping, you know, a long part off. But yeah, it's been nice to go back to this format and use the whole sensor.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
No, of course.
I've enjoyed myself. I'm not sure about anyone else, but I've had the best time.
You know, I could keep this. I just picked, you know, a few images. There's thousands and thousands that I could talk about, but I just kind of grabbed a few that I thought would be of interest.
Oh, amazing. I don't know how you do it. Like, I've obviously not been doing it for 30 years, but even now when I'm going through my archive of stuff, I'm like, oh, I forgot I did that, and oh, I don't remember doing that, but here it is. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah, we've got all the thank yous. Great talk. Thank you both. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you. All right. Bye. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.